No social media, no porn, no fatty foods, no instant gratification activities.
Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification. Except job satisfaction and strength of relationships, there ain't no app for that.
It seems everyone in the self-development space is promoting discipline and delayed gratification activities.
Those little tasks and projects and short-term goals that you tackle, they need to lead toward that strategic victory. Winning the long war.
And for good reason. A man who spends all his time on social media or Netflix will waste his life away and become depressed. Whereas the man who prioritizes working on himself, exercising, studying, building his business, he will live a much more fulfilling life. But is delayed gratification all that it's cracked up to be? Why do so many people seem to struggle with being consistent with delayed gratification? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what the scientific studies have to say about delayed gratification. I'm going to be explaining my opinion on why you should stop pursuing delayed gratification activities, and I'm going to give you something else to try out instead if it's not working for you. And if you've been struggling with delayed gratification for a while, I promise you this alternative will lead you to a much more successful and fulfilling life. I promise. So, what do the studies have to say about all of this? Well, first, we must go back to the study where this all began, the Marshmallow Experiment. If you're unaware of what the Marshmallow Experiment is, let me just very quickly explain it for you. A study was conducted in the 1960s with a group of kids, and essentially they just put all these kids, each individually, in a room and set a marshmallow on the table, and they told them, don't eat the marshmallow until we get back, and if you can, put off eating that marshmallow until we get back into the room, we'll give you an extra marshmallow. Meaning, if you wait now and resist the marshmallow, you'll get 2 marshmallows later on. Delayed gratification, right? And out of the kids who were able to resist eating the marshmallow, they were found later on in life to be much more successful. This was because the kids had naturally more willpower, and so they were able to push through the harder, more boring activities, and instead of constantly going after that instant pleasure, were able to put it off until later on. And so naturally that applied to work and exercise and all that. And I don't know about you, but hearing about this experiment made me a little bit scared. Does that mean our success is determined right from birth? Or willpower is purely genetic, and if you've got the gift of it, great, you're going to be happy and successful. If you don't have it, too bad. Well, not exactly. You see, more recently, the University of Rochester did an experiment similar to the Marshmallow Experiment, but with a slight twist. And that was, they had 2 different groups of kids. The first group was exposed to very inconsistent experiences with delayed gratification. They were given a small box of crayons and told later on that they would bring them a bigger box of crayons, but then they never did. Then they gave them a small sticker and said, we'll be back later with a much bigger and better selection of stickers, but never did. Meanwhile, the second group had a very reliable experience with delayed gratification. They gave them a small box of crayons, told them that they would bring them a bigger one, and they got the bigger selection of crayons. They gave them a small sticker, told them that they would get a bigger and better selection of stickers, and they got them. And as I'm sure you can imagine, the group who was exposed to those consistent experiences with delayed gratification passed the Marshmallow Experiment, which technically means that they should live a much more successful and happy life, right? Meaning that success doesn't come down to genetics, it comes down to environment. But let's just dive a little deeper into that, shall we? I don't know what that was, dive a little deeper. The thing that determined whether or not the child had willpower was able to be determined and changed within minutes. Just a few minutes of unreliable circumstances led them to have no willpower, whereas just a few minutes of reliable circumstances led them to have a bunch of willpower. Meaning, if you want to be successful, you have to make sure that your delayed gratification activities are paying off. If you're constantly doing these delayed gratification activities and you've been doing them for years, but you're yet to actually get that delayed gratification, then your brain is going to determine that you're just wasting energy. There's no point in doing stuff like this. Let's just go back to the instant gratification, because at least we can get, guaranteed gratification from that. You see, the thing is, If you want to achieve incredible things with your life, build a business, write a book, become a star, even just do anything that requires any form of willpower, you're going to have inconsistent experiences with delayed gratification. It's just the way it is. You're going to fail at least a couple of times, but the reality is you're probably going to fail over and over and over again. Meaning if you're constantly doing these delayed gratification activities that aren't, paying off, your brain is literally going to hijack you and drive you towards the instant gratification activities like social media and Netflix, because it's just determining, stop wasting your energy. Go for this pleasure instead. There's no pleasure to be gained. There's nothing to be gained over there. Just come here instead. The brain thinks that delayed gratification activities actually just means no gratification and a waste of energy. For most great things in life, you're going to have to push through failures and inconsistent results with delaying gratification. Meaning that unless you're one of the very lucky few who see success very early on, you're probably gonna end up giving up or putting in way less energy and effort into your goals once the going gets tough. It's just the wiring of our brain. And this explains why so many people struggle with performing delayed gratification activities in the long term. Which is why I never directly go after the delayed gratification activity. Instead, I spend about 80% of my time on something that I call pure gratification activities. These are activities that give you both instant gratification and delayed gratification. Now, most people seem to think that these activities don't exist, but of course they do. Do you think a painter only enjoys a painting once he's finished it? Of course not. He loves the process and he loves the end result. And this is something that a lot of people would refer to as the flow state, right? Where you stop noticing time goes by, your focus tends to narrow in, and you're just having a great time doing whatever it is. You've probably been in this state before. And this could be a reality for everyone, for every piece of work that they want to do. Whether you're starting an internet business, you want to get into writing, you want to be an actor, you want to be an athlete, whatever. You can have pure instant gratification as well as delayed gratification. You can and should get instant pleasure as well as that delayed pleasure. I don't know who started this whole thing where it's just delayed gratification and you can't have fun in the moment. You absolutely should be having fun. That is where most of your time is going. If you're not having fun while performing the activity, then man, you're going to be spending a lot of your life not having fun. When doing something like scrolling social media, you probably feel kind of good in the moment. You're kind of in a dirty flow state. You're not noticing time going by. You're just flicking through. But you tend to feel guilty afterwards, especially if you spend like a long time on it. And this is instant gratification. And then there's maybe like a business or studying or something like this. And it feels really boring at the time. It feels like work, but you don't feel guilty afterwards. In fact, you feel good because it's like, I did it. That thing's done. You don't feel guilty afterwards, and you feel like kind of proud immediately after doing it. You get like money or a reward or something afterwards. That's kind of the more delayed gratification, right? But like pure gratification activities are whenever you combine both of those elements, the best of both worlds. We're doing it Hannah Montana style. It's like whenever you love your work, your exercising, your socializing, whatever it is, whenever you love the process of actually doing it, but you also feel good afterwards. You don't feel any guilt, you feel good afterwards. Plus there could be like a major payoff for it, way on down later in your life, right? Like working on your business, a big payoff later on, after you've done the work, you don't feel guilty about it, you feel good. But then later on down the line, years, you could be a millionaire. When exercising, you feel good during exercise, you don't feel guilty afterwards, immediately afterwards doing it, you feel good after doing it, because you're like, I've just been exercising. And then later on down the line, you could be in really, really good, healthy shape. And that's the really delayed part. And for socializing, you feel really, really good when socializing. Afterwards, you don't feel guilty about it because you're like, this is part of my human need. This is fun. I'm glad I get to do this regularly. And then the payoff could be that you get into like a romantic relationship, right? You meet the love of your life. That's kind of like the 3 different stages. The process, the immediately after, the activity, and then the actual delayed gratification part that's way on down the line. But if I just start a business for the delayed gratification, for the chance to be a millionaire, right? And I'm doing it for 2 years, which this is very common. 2 years in, you've made little to no money, At this point, you've received no real gratification from it because you don't naturally enjoy the process. The only thing you're really getting is every now and then you feel kind of proud that at least you're working, but that's it. And your brain determines that this is just not worth it. And eventually you're going to stop putting in energy and effort, and over time you're probably just going to completely give up on your business. Compare that to someone who just loves working on their business. Of course, they're excited by the idea of making millions, but they just genuinely get into a flow state every time they're working on their business. They just love it. Then that person, it doesn't matter if they're not getting that delayed gratification. Their brain might be like, we're not getting that, but we're still getting the instant gratification of the process. Let's just keep going. And that way they can just keep going and going and going. And then like 5 years down the line, they push through all that barrier and boom, then they do become a millionaire. You see, if you don't find your current work instantly gratifying, then maybe it's not for you. Although that's not necessarily the case, it's also possible you've just got some fears and anxieties around that, in which case you should work on those. But you definitely want to consider if you don't find the activity instantly gratifying, and you never have, then maybe this isn't the line of work or the exercise or the type of people you should be socializing with. Because if you're only doing these things for the delayed gratification, or the delayed rewards, you have to remember that you're not always going to get rewarded. And if you have inconsistent rewards, it's very likely in the long term you're going to stop putting in the effort, as was proven in that second Marshmallow Experiment. And you probably won't ever reach your full potential. What I want you to do is to do an audit of every habit and activity you have or that you do on a daily basis. Activities just like the work that you're doing, the exercises that you're doing, who you're socializing with, those types of activities and habits, meditating, reading, okay? I want you to answer all 4 of these questions. Do I genuinely enjoy this habit, regardless of the results that I get from it? Do I regularly notice time passing while performing this habit? Do I feel good immediately after performing this habit? Done over a long enough period of time, could this habit lead to great things in my life? And if you can answer yes to all 4 of those questions, then you've found yourself a pure gratification activity, the best kind of activity. And I'm not saying all of your time needs to be spent on pure gratification activities, but life is about the journey, so you probably want to be spending as much time as possible doing things that make you feel good, not just constantly doing boring or hard things in the hopes that you'll eventually feel good. Plus, studies have proven that this is probably giving you the best chance to have success, no matter what the domain is. Because sometimes that delayed gratification is much more delayed than you were expecting, and this can cause you to start procrastinating and putting in less effort towards that activity. So do work that feels good while working. Do exercise that feels good while exercising. Socialize with people that feels good while socializing. And just do very fruitful activities that also give you instant pleasure. If you get instant pleasure from something that's fruitful, you can't lose. Because the man who only does delayed gratification activities and is constantly waiting for it to come, well, he might find himself waiting forever.